Well, hey there, campers, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Camp Cryptid. I'm your host, Erica Fett. And this week, grab your sage and salt for protection and prepare to open a forbidden vault of stories of some of my absolute favorite stories of cursed objects in the world. And some people say that these objects are just things, just made of wood, metal, stone. They're lifeless, they're harmless. But others believe certain items hold more than just their history. These objects hold energy, emotions, and in some cases, maybe even something darker and sinister. From ancient tombs and relics or porcelain dolls to gorgeous, dazzling gemstones, cursed objects have fascinated and terrified people since the beginning of written history. Now, the question is, are these items really cursed? Or is it all in our heads, simply coincidences or strings of bad that just happen to have a spooky legend attached to them? Now, surely if you believe in objects that bring good luck, there must also be some that bring bad luck, bring misfortune, doom, or even death. Now, some cursed objects are locked away in museums or buried deep underground for protection from the evil that they bring. But other objects sit quietly on shelves in bedrooms. There's no doubt that dolls are creepy, and with places like La Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls in Mexico, it really helps add the nightmare fuel with how unsettling some dolls can be. And of course, there are also many stories of haunted and possessed dolls over the years, so it really just comes down to the fact that dolls are, well, they're just creepy as hell. But one of my favorite stories of dolls, if you haven't heard of Robert the Doll, this one is a really cool story. So, Robert the Doll's story starts in Key West, Florida. And it starts around the early 1900s when a family's life was forever changed when their young son, Robert Eugene Otto, and we'll call him Gene because he used to go by Gene, when Gene received a doll as a gift. Now, this doll stood about 40 inches tall and was created by the German company Steiff. Now, eventually this doll would wear one of Gene's old sailor outfits, which Robert the Doll stays dressed in even to this day. Now, even though this doll seemed normal, it wasn't long after Gene's parents started to notice that things were a little, well, off. When Gene misbehaved or would get into trouble, he would often say that he didn't do it, that Robert the Doll did it. And there was no denying that Gene had an unbreakable bond with this doll. In fact, his parents would hear him talking to the doll in the other rooms, but would hear a voice that wasn't Gene's replying back. Now, the story goes that his parents even said that it seemed like the doll's expressions would change. Now, as Gene grew older and his parents passed away, he held on to Robert the Doll. And when Gene finally found love and got married, his new wife, Annie, felt very uncomfortable by Robert the Doll. In fact, she asked that Gene store him in the attic. But that's where this little weird story gets even weirder. It was said that Annie could hear footsteps in the attic and a child's giggle. There were even stories of people that walked by the house who said that they could see the doll watching them from the attic window as they walked by. Now, sometime after Gene passed away in the 70s, many people who rented out rooms in this house also had run-ins and encounters of their own with Robert the Doll. The tenants of the house said that they would hear footsteps running across the floor, a child's laugh, or when Robert was out of the attic, they said that the doll would move across the room on its own. There were even instances of people noticing that the doll would change expressions, much like what Gene's parents would experience. Now, the ownership of the doll did bounce around a bit until it found its home in the 4 East Martello Museum in the 90s. But even as Robert the Doll sits in the museum, there's lots of weird stories and unexplained occurrences that have happened. There are not only multiple stories of equipment malfunctioning around the doll's exhibit, there are people who actually faced a series of misfortunate events after visiting Robert the Doll. In fact, there were actually a stack of apology letters to Robert the Doll from the people who visited the museum who either felt like they disrespected him in some way or just that they needed to apologize to lift the bad luck curse. Now, either way, Robert the Doll patiently sits waiting in the museum in the Florida Keys, haunting those that dare come visit him. Stories of Robert the Doll have haunted people over the years, and then adding in the misfortune of some that come face to face with him, well, it makes people wonder if something inside of this wooden doll is actually alive. So it's recommended that if you visit Robert the doll in this museum, to always ask for his permission to film or take pictures of him. Or else, well, you may have some bad luck coming your way. And side note, I have looked into this museum and I actually asked my husband if we can go because I want to stay overnight in the area and kind of see what this is all about. And personally, I love dolls. I played with Barbies until like the 8th grade. Well, because I'm a huge loser. But regardless, I think it's a cute little doll. And I personally don't get any weird vibes from it. But also, I haven't met him face to face. So I can report back after I do experience it. And the cool little bit about Robert the doll is, word is, Robert the doll is actually what inspired Chucky. So, pretty cool. So Robert the doll is really cool. I haven't met him yet, but hopefully one of these days. Now, when it comes to one of the more known cursed dolls, this doll has movies after her and all that jazz. We know Annabelle. And while in the movie, she's depicted as this really super creepy looking blonde doll with like a sinister smile, that really couldn't be further from what she actually looks like. So let's go back to the start to Connecticut around the 70s, which, side note, Connecticut just has so much stuff. Why is Connecticut like one of the most haunted states ever? I swear, like every episode, I feel like I find something weird or strange or haunting in like Connecticut. It's crazy. So Connecticut around the 70s. Now, this story starts when a Raggedy Ann doll was given as a gift to a young woman named Donna. But soon after the doll was placed in the home, very strange things started to occur. Now, the story says that the doll would move on its own and that Donna and her roommate at the time would find these little notes with the words "help me" written on them. Now, overall, the girls got a very malicious, unsettling vibe from this doll. And they decided to enlist the help of a psychic. And this psychic concluded that the spirit of a little girl that died on the grounds of the apartment complex found a home for her soul within this doll. Now, after the involvement of the psychic, weird things continue to happen, and even supposedly the boyfriend of Donna's roommate experienced a supernatural attack when he touched the doll. And this wasn't the only person who felt like they were attacked by the doll. In fact, many people over the course of this story claimed that they felt like they were physically attacked, and in some instances, supposedly, the attacks drew blood. Now, cue the involvement of Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens believed that this doll wasn't inhabited by an innocent little girl. It actually was possessed by a demon. It was then that the Warrens removed the doll from Donna's apartment, placing it in their museum in a locked box with the sign "Positively Do Not Open" on the outside of the box. Now, side note, and this is where I'm going to be biased, is my opinion, that Ed and Lorraine Warren often fabricated, embellished, and sensationalized stories in order to gain popularity within the field. So I don't know how much I believe that there was actually a demon. I don't know, but that's just a little side note. Now, Annabelle is currently not in the museum. She was moving around a bit from haunted locations across the country as kind of a press tour for the new Conjuring movie, The Last Rites. And there's also some weird stuff that happened with that. And it just honestly, when it comes down to Annabelle, a lot of speculation on if it is actually haunted and honestly, if it's a demon. But now, Annabelle is also one that I think is a really good story because obviously we love some cursed dolls, right? But Annabelle also is really well known in popular culture because there are so many movies, and with the Conjurings being so huge and bringing more light to the Annabelle story, of course, she gets a lot of hype. But yeah. That's little Annabelle. Now, side note, this isn't really a cursed doll, but I thought this was a really cool story when I was researching, and it's about Okiku, the doll, which is in Japan. And it's a Japanese doll, and the story says that in the early 1900s, Okiku the doll was said to be a gift given by a brother to his sister Okiku. Now, Okiku was inseparable from the doll. She absolutely loved it, took it everywhere she went. But sadly, Okiku tragically died young, and due to burial customs, the doll wasn't allowed to be buried with her. And she now resides at a monastery in Japan, where her hair is said to keep growing. Ooh, plot twist. You know, I guess it could be cursed, right? You know, a doll's hair that keeps growing. I mean, that's definitely not normal. But I had to throw that one in there because I was like, yeah, we're talking about dolls a little bit. So I thought that was a really cool story about a doll. And, you know, there are so many dolls that are creepy, right? But at least they look the part of being spooky. I mean, you walk into a room full of dolls, you're like, okay, this is crazy. And I even like dolls. But what is even more scary are the curses that you would never even think of. The objects that are stunning and beautiful to look at, but tragedy befalls those that adorn their bodies with these treasures. And cursed jewels. Cursed jewels. Glittering and dazzling heirlooms whose shine comes at a price. From royal diamonds soaked in blood, death, and betrayal, to rings said to summon vengeance from ancient gods. These beautiful jewels are both cursed and deadly. Now, this first one is one that I love. As soon as I was looking into this, I said, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. But this first one is one that I've seen pretty much all of my life, in print and on TV. And I've even seen it in person at the Smithsonian in DC with my own eyes. And while I always thought this stone was absolutely magnificent, I had no idea that it had such a dark history behind it. So, the Hope Diamond. Insert Tim Curry saying diamonds from Congo. Oh, jeez. Stop me now. So, while we don't know really exactly when the Hope Diamond was mined in India, its cursed journey started sometime in the late 1600s when it was sold to King Louis XIV. However, legends of the diamond say that the renowned jewelry merchant, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who sold it to the royals, faced an unfortunate death when his body was ripped apart by wild dogs shortly after turning over the diamond. And years later, the diamond found itself in the hands of King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Now, we all know how that story turns out. Due to the turmoil of their rule, their reign ended in public beheadings, and with riots and revolution, the diamond was stolen due to looting. Now, the diamond randomly popped up years later when a jeweler had it in his collection. But after he passed away and it was inherited, the diamond ended up being sold by multiple merchants to pay off debts. And then more stories about the source of the real curse of the diamond started circulating. Tales of the diamond being stolen from a statue from a temple in India, tales of the original merchant being torn apart by rabid wild dogs, and those who touched it, their lives blighted by this curse. Imminent death to those who wore it, finances left in ruins. It seemed like everyone that came into contact with the diamond faced death, or at least incredibly bad luck with finances. And that bad luck usually left them deeply in debt. I mean, even people who had just worn the diamond died. There was Nicolas Fouquet, who was executed shortly after wearing the diamond. And then there was Hendrik Falls, who was said to have looted it after Louis and Marie Antoinette were beheaded. He committed suicide. Jacques Collot, said to be another owner, was said to go mad and also commit suicide. Then it was passed on to Prince Ivan Kanitovsky, and he was killed during war by revolutionaries. Prince Kanitovsky loaned the necklace to Lorenz Ledoux, who was killed by her lover. And then there was a merchant by the name of Simon, who supposedly sold the diamond to a sultan. And then shortly after he sold it off to the sultan, he and his family were thrown off a steep cliff while riding together, and they all died. There are stories of merchants who handled the ring, who all met tragic fates, some like drowning. People who tried to steal the diamond were hung. So once it found itself in the hands of Evelyn McLean in the 1900s, after centuries of death and tragedy followed this diamond, she insisted that the diamond needed blessed in a church to obviously rid itself of the curse. But shortly after this blessing, even though Evelyn considered the blessed diamond her good luck charm, her husband actually left her to be with another woman. Her 9-year-old son died tragically in a car accident, and years later, her daughter even died tragically from a drug overdose. And the kicker, eventually her family business went bankrupt. Now, after she died, to pay off her debts, the diamond found itself in the hands of Harry Winston, the renowned jeweler. I mean, you probably heard of Harry Winston. This guy's an OG. The diamond spent almost a decade on display for people to gaze upon its beauty. And after about 10 years of being on display, Winston donated the diamond to the Smithsonian. In fact, there's kind of a funny little story about how he sent the diamond. He sent the diamond, this diamond worth like literally hundreds of millions. I don't even know. It's worth like a lot. He sent the diamond via regular registered mail with postage that cost about $2.44, and he insured it for $140. But you can visit the Hope Diamond in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian. I've actually seen it, and when I saw it, I had no idea that there was like this crazy amount of like drama around this thing, like crazy. And part of me does wonder if anyone working there has ever felt like weird vibes coming from it. But I will say, like, when it comes to gemstones, I'm a huge mineral collector. I rock hound in my local river. My husband goes out there and like helps me look for flint and stuff. And while I love to take pieces home with me that are more like abundantly found all over, there are some regions and cultures with more of the rare mineral specimens that the cultures actually believe that taking the rare minerals out of their home, it brings bad luck, and you're like not supposed to do it. So I will say that kind of like checks out when it comes to gemstones, you know, especially if this was something that was stolen from a sacred temple in India. Like, of course, it should absolutely be cursed. Now, aside from the Hope Diamond, there is another stone from India that is said to be cursed as well, and it's the Maruna Baroda. And it's a 24 karat yellow diamond. And it is also said to have a little curse that went along with it, that if it ever crossed oceans or seas away from where it was actually like mined, it would bring bad luck to whoever owned it. And it was actually worn by Marie Antoinette's mom before she passed. And it was actually later worn by Marilyn Monroe. So that's a little tidbit there for that stone. And, you know, when it comes down to it, there are other cursed objects. We all know the curse of King Tut's tomb, right? The curse of the mummy's tombs. That is probably one that first comes to mind for anyone. And that is said to be a curse associated with interrupting the remains of pharaohs. And one that is said to bring misfortune, illness, and death. Or at least that's what Howard Carter, the lead of the King Tut expedition, said. And that was back in 1922 when Howard Carter ran that expedition. And after opening the tomb, a string of bad luck hit some of the members of the expedition. You had the main financier of the expedition had a freak accident where he was actually bitten by a mosquito. His blood became infected and he passed away a year after opening the tomb. And there were also others on the expedition who died of blood poisonings, unexplained illness, and fever. There was even a weird coincidence of someone's house mysteriously burning down after receiving a gift where someone gifted him something from the tomb. And after the house was rebuilt, it actually flooded. So there were all these weird, tragic things that happened after the tomb was excavated. Now, on the flip side of the curse, you know, if we're trying to be like, you know, Agent Dana Scully, there are tomb toxins and deadly fungus that can definitely exist in tombs that laid undisturbed for over, 1,000 years. And getting bitten by a mosquito in the desert, well, probably not unheard of to, get some kind of virus from that. But I will say absolutely bad luck to those getting blood poisonings and, their house burning down and then flooding. That sucks. But some of these things could definitely be explainable for sure. And, there's also stories of museums with mummies said to be haunted, like the British Museum, who has a ton of mummies. I think it's like over 100 mummies. And it is also said to be very haunted, which I've been there. I can imagine. I mean, it was creepy walking through the day in the British Museum, but I can only imagine at night. And I want to do an overnight there now, instantly. However, I'm personally a fan of the curse, and whether the curse is real or just, a little fable to avoid grave robbing, well, I'm down with either one. I don't think that we should definitely be disturbing anyone's tomb, right? Let them rest, even as cool and awesome as, these tombs may be. And when it comes down to cursed objects, that really just boils down to if you believe that an item could have supernatural properties. And whether that item is a lucky token or a pendant, a good luck charm. If you believe that something could have positive attachments like bringing good luck, the alternative to that is that it could also bring bad luck or be cursed. And really, it's just a conversation on if an object can go beyond just being an object. There's crystal balls, slabs of obsidian that can be used as mirrors of time, or even minerals and certain elements have powers to heal. For example, if you find a bit of quartz rock out there, quartz is said to heal and help your well-being. And there's many other minerals like amethyst, malachite, fluorite, obsidian that are said to have different healing properties too. Like jade is supposed to bring good luck, black tourmaline can ward off negative energy, and the list goes on. Now, there are other instances of objects having some lore or spiritual attachment to them. You've got the Philosopher's Stone, which is probably one of my favorites. I love that As Above, So Below had the Philosopher's Stone in it. That was so sick. The Philosopher's Stone is a gemstone that had the power to transmute any material into gold and control time. You have ideas that books or Ouija boards can conjure spirits. There's even, if you're looking at something like an object, can houses actually hold the energy and spirits of the past? So, when it comes down to this, campers, it's all in what you believe, right? If you believe that objects can be cursed, or whether you just think that there's a rational explanation, it's all in belief, right? Now, I will say I had to round off this episode with movies based on cursed objects, right? You have to. So Chucky, I mentioned Chucky earlier, when it came down to the dolls section, you've got Annabelle as well. But the monkey, And I do believe I have a monkey behind me, actually, from the movie The Monkey, which, I mean, that has been like such an iconic, like, horror item for so long. Then you've got the idea of Christine, the cursed evil car, right? Hellraiser, the puzzle box, the lament configuration. Then you've got the movie The Oculus, which is about a cursed mirror, which was pretty cool too. I actually think we watched that like recently, didn't we? The Oculus? Yeah. Sorry, I'm talking to my husband. He's just sitting there. He's my support. Thanks, honey. And then The Ring, obviously. Cursed VHS. Am I missing anything else? Cursed objects? I think that's it. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's my little cursed objects little run through. Like I said, there are a ton of actual like gemstones that are said to be cursed. And you know, the Hope Diamond is, I've seen pictures of it and it's gorgeous and I've seen it in person, but I had no idea that it had like this crazy string of like 60 people who have died, right? So now when I have to go back to DC to the Smithsonian, I'm going to have to check it out. But yeah, other than that, I want to thank everybody so much for stopping by at Mothman Festival. I was there with Cryptid Camp, the little TCG I've been working on with Emilio. I had Emilio on a couple, months back for an interview. But it's like our little cryptid urban legend and folklore based TCG game that we've been working on for the past, year or so, a little bit longer maybe. And it was a blast, honestly. It was such a blast seeing everybody. And Mothman Festival is awesome. And it was just honestly, even though it was hot as hell, oh my word, it was honestly just seeing everybody have such a great time and everybody bond over Mothman love. Oh gosh, it was awesome. So I'm so excited. I will be at New York Comic Con next week. I'm so excited. If you're listening and you want to come see me at New York Comic Con, I will be in Cosplay Central all week long at my booth. And I probably will cosplay a little bit, but I think I'm going to go pretty comfy this year, y'all. I like got this big, beautiful wig made for me to do the Bride of Frankenstein. And I tried that thing on and I just sat there and I was like, if I am in this thing for 10 hours, my neck is just gonna, it was rough. So I don't know if I'm gonna wear the Bride of Frankenstein this year, y'all, but if I do take some pictures in it, I'm gonna have Wes, my dear friend who shoots my cosplay, the portrait dude, come take some pictures in the cosplay. So at least I can put this beautiful wig to use because it is stunning. I'll have to post pictures on my Instagram. Other than that, I hope you're having an amazing fall so far. It is nuts that it's already October. Like, where is time? I just feel like this year has already like flown by so much and I'm like, oh, what is going on? But yeah, I'm really excited. I will have more cryptid episodes, more interviews, and a New York Comic Con recap coming soon. And for those of you I'll be seeing next week at New York Comic Con, I can't wait to see y'all's faces. And also see y'all at CryptidCon in November. That will be the next and probably the last event that I do this year, but it's going to be a great time. It's going to be awesome. CryptidCon is a real fun time too. But yeah, other than that, I hope y'all are having an amazing fall. Happy spooky season. And until next time, take care.